What if I told you that $5 worth of copper wire could triple your harvest? No fertilizer, no chemicals, no complicated equipment, just copper, soil, and a secret that's been buried for almost 100 years. Today we're opening an archive that powerful industries hoped you'd never find. This is Electroculture, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why this knowledge was marginalized and why it's finally coming back. But first, let me tell you about a farmer named Earl. 1. Dust Bowl, Oklahoma. A farmer named Earl couldn't afford fertilizer, hadn't been able to for 3 years. His neighbors had already packed up and left for California. The banks were taking everything. But Earl remembered something. Something his grandfather told him about copper and lightning rods and how plants seemed to grow better near them. So he tried something desperate. He wrapped copper wire around wooden stakes, drove them into his dying field. That summer, while dust storms buried farms across the plains, Earl's tomatoes grew. Not just grew, thrived. He never told anyone how, just smiled when neighbors asked. Now, how did Earl know this would work? Where did that knowledge come from? To answer that, we need to go back, further back than the Depression, back to 1926. 1. A man named Justin Christoflo files patent CH18648A in Switzerland. His claim was extraordinary. Plants grow 30% faster with electrical stimulation from copper. The claim was bold enough that the British government took notice. They formed a committee, official, funded, serious. They studied electroculture for 12 years. 1. The committee releases its final report. The conclusion? Results? Promising. Then, silence. The patent expired. The research disappeared into archives, and the fertilizer industry flourished. Now, I'm not saying there was a grand conspiracy, but I am asking you to notice a pattern, a technology that could reduce dependence on purchased inputs, somehow never made it into the mainstream. Meanwhile, farmers became more and more dependent on products they had to buy every single season. But here's the thing about knowledge. Real knowledge. It doesn't die. It just goes underground. It survives in the hands of people who couldn't afford the official solutions. People like Earl. So let's talk about the science. Because this isn't magic. It's biology. Plants are electrical beings. Every cell in a plant generates tiny electrical signals. These signals control growth, nutrient uptake, and stress response. When you introduce copper into soil, something interesting happens. Copper is highly conductive. It interacts with the Earth's natural electromagnetic field, and this interaction creates a subtle electrical environment around your plant's roots. The roots respond by increasing ion channel activity. More nutrients flow in. Growth accelerates. This isn't speculation. This is documented. 1. Chinese agricultural researchers run a controlled experiment. 2 identical fields. Same seeds, same water, same soil. One difference. Copper electrodes in the ground. Results? The electrified field produced 28% more yield. The paper was published in a peer-reviewed journal. Solid methodology, clear results. Then, quietly forgotten. Again. See the pattern? Now I want to pause here and ask you something. Does this surprise you? That research like this exists, but somehow never reaches mainstream gardening advice? Drop a comment below. I'm genuinely curious what you think is going on here. All right, let's get practical. Remember our Oklahoma farmer, Earl. He didn't have fancy equipment, didn't have a PhD, didn't have money. What he had was copper wire and desperation. And that's all you need too. Here's exactly what Earl did, and here's how you can do the same thing this weekend. You'll need copper wire. 14 to 18 gauge works best. You can get 50 feet for about $5 at any hardware store. Wooden stakes or bamboo poles, about 4 to 6 feet tall. That's it. The basic principle is simple. You're creating an antenna that captures atmospheric electricity and channels it into your soil. There are 3 main methods. I'll show you all of them, starting with the simplest. Method 1, the spiral stake. Easiest. Take your wooden stake. Starting at the bottom, wrap copper wire around it in a spiral pattern. The key is direction. In the northern hemisphere, wrap clockwise when viewed from above. Southern hemisphere, counterclockwise. Why? This aligns with the Earth's magnetic field. The Coriolis effect influences how energy moves through your antenna. Make your spiral loose, about 6 inches between each wrap. Leave about 2 feet of wire extending from the top. Drive the stake 12 to 18 inches into the ground. The buried portion grounds the system. The exposed wire captures atmospheric charge. Place 1 stake for every 25 to 50 square feet of garden. Method 2, the grid system. More effective. For larger gardens, create a grid. Run copper wire in parallel lines across your garden, about 3 feet apart and 6 inches above the soil surface. Connect these lines to grounding stakes at each corner. This creates a field effect. The entire garden becomes one large antenna. Many gardeners report this method produces the most dramatic results, but it requires more wire and more setup. Method 3, the atmospheric antenna. Advanced. This is what serious electroculture practitioners use. Take a 6-foot wooden dowel, wrap copper wire from bottom to top in a tight spiral. At the very top, form the wire into a small loop or sphere. This sphere acts as a collector. It pulls in atmospheric electricity and channels it down through the spiral into the ground. Place these at the corners of your garden and connect them with buried copper wire. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too simple, too cheap. If it really worked, everyone would be doing it. And that's exactly what the fertilizer companies want you to think. But consider this. For thousands of years, humans grew food without synthetic inputs. Our ancestors weren't stupid. They observed. They experimented. They learned. Somewhere along the way, we forgot. Quick question for those of you who've made it this far. Have you ever tried electroculture? Or something like it? Maybe you put copper pennies in your garden, or noticed plants growing better near metal structures. Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one. Important considerations. A few things to keep in mind. Soil matters. Electroculture works best in soil with good mineral content. If your soil is depleted, the effects will be less dramatic. Consider adding rock dust or comité to improve conductivity. Patience matters. You won't see results overnight. Most gardeners notice differences after 2 to 4 weeks. The real magic shows up in the second growing season. Placement matters. Keep your copper away from synthetic materials. Plastic, rubber, treated wood. These can interfere with conductivity. Use natural materials whenever possible. Now let's talk about how this applies to your specific situation. Electroculture works everywhere, but the application varies by climate. Zones 3 through 5. Cold climates. Your short growing season makes every day count. Electroculture can extend your effective season by 2 to 3 weeks on each end. Focus on tomatoes, peppers, and other heat-loving crops that struggle in your zone. Zones 6 through 7. Temperate. This is the sweet spot. You'll see the most dramatic results here. Try electroculture on your main vegetable garden and compare sections with and without. Zones 8 through 10. Warm climates. Heat stress is your enemy. Electroculture helps plants regulate temperature and water uptake. Focus on keeping plants healthy during peak summer, not just increasing yield. I've collected testimonies from gardeners across all these zones. The results are consistent. 20% to 40% yield increases, healthier plants, fewer pest problems, and all for about $5 in copper wire. We've covered a lot today. The history, the science, the practical application. But I want to leave you with something more important than techniques. Here's something to think about. Your great-grandmother might have run copper wire along her clothesline, right above her vegetable garden. She probably didn't know why it worked, just that her mother did it, and her grandmother before that. The knowledge didn't come from books. It came from watching, from paying attention, from trusting what worked, even without understanding the mechanism. Somewhere between then and now, we stopped trusting observation. We started trusting only what came in bags with instructions and price tags. But the old knowledge didn't die. It survived in backyard gardens, in rural communities, in the hands of people who couldn't afford to buy what corporations were selling. People like Earl, people like your great-grandmother, maybe people like you. Electroculture isn't just a gardening technique. It's a reclaiming, a remembering, a quiet rebellion against the idea that you need to buy your way to abundance. The knowledge was always there, sleeping in the soil, waiting for someone to wake it up. Maybe that someone is you. If you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer. You're a keeper of knowledge. And knowledge like this, it survives because people share it. If this video helped you, here's what I'm asking. Subscribe. Not for me, for the algorithm. Because every subscription tells YouTube that this kind of content matters, that people want to learn what they're not supposed to learn. Drop a comment sharing what you're going to try first. The spiral stake? The grid system? Something your grandmother used to do? I read every comment. I respond to as many as I can. This isn't just a channel. It's an archive. And you're part of it now. If you want to go deeper, check out this video where I show results after a full growing season. Or this one on a complementary technique that works perfectly alongside what we covered today. The knowledge is waking up. Help it spread. I'll see you in the next archive.